Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Hermit. Well, this is going to be about saints and how people react to saints and or after the fact in a way. They come up with things that they did in their childhood and get really sort of extreme about it. And then they think, if I'd have a vision or something, I could be a saint, or I would try harder or something if I had a vision like that, or they go really gaga over saints or little things that they wrote or thought about when they were children. After the fact, though, after they've been made saints, and then people are chipping in and aggrandizing it, even embellishing. Like, well, I'll give an example. That's what I'll do. I had an email last night from a dear friend. She's a younger woman, mother now, and got married, and I think she's probably 36, 37. Maybe she just turned 37. In fact, she's expecting her third child. Married a little later, but she worked her way through school, first one in her family to go to college, and got a master's even. So she is a counselor, licensed marriage family, but she isn't doing that now. She's a stay-at-home mother. She met her husband at church. She's a beautiful singer, and she came from a family of her dad was one of, I think, 18 children, or 15 or 17, something like that. I think it was 18. And he had rough times as a young adult and man. He drug issues and alcohol, but he got all clean. I call him St. Mark. I have ever since I've known him. Known him for 29 years. In fact, I think he's in the hospital, very ill. He's maybe home now, on hospice with cancer. He would be probably 82 or 83 now. And this daughter is a younger child, a second marriage, or maybe he might have had one child out of wedlock, and then, but he's a saintly man. I'm telling you, when he had gotten clean, maybe shortly before I became Catholic, about 30 years ago. And the wife, he's still married to the same wife that he had then, but she had drinking problems and heavy smoker and all, and didn't go to church. Now, he went to church, very devout, and just worked, I think drove trucks, and the wife drove trucks for a trucking company. And they had 3 children, this man and his wife. He has an older son and an older daughter from other relationships, maybe a first marriage, and maybe one just from a relationship between marriages or something. And St. Mark, he was the nicest man to me, and he had an old pickup truck. He'd go out, he loves nature, he'd go out mushroom hunting, fishing, catching turtles. He'd fix turtle stew for his family, and but he would get these wonderful morel mushrooms in the woods. He had spots he would go, and he would give me lots. He was so generous to me, so kind. I had gotten to know his daughter one night at Mass. Well, it'll sort of come out in what I'm going to read or tell you about. But so Amanda now is, and it took her a long time getting through college because she had to work her way through. And she was older than her younger brother and sister and brother, by, let's see, she was maybe 10 when the little sister was 4 and the little brother maybe 2. And even at 8, she'd go home from school and watch those children. A lot, And when the mother went back to work, by 10, she was definitely the one. And sometimes I would go and just be with her there because I just felt it was a lot. My son didn't get home from school. Well, by then he was maybe 14 when she was 10. But he wouldn't get home from school till later because he would drive. It was in a nearby town, and he had a ride with a man who lived in our town who was the guidance counselor at the Catholic high school in the city nearby. So he'd get home maybe 4:30 or 4:15. So I could be there from 3 till 4. Because I just felt it was a lot of responsibility for a little girl. And I just go and hang out with her. But she'd be watching her brother and sister. I'd just sort of be there and help her with her homework, or if she wanted help with her brother or sister. But we had become friends. I just sensed, but I was always very careful. And about the time she got a little older, I backed away as far as being around or having her to my house, because and helping her with her homework and stuff. I didn't want to cause problems with her mother. You have to be very sensitive with families, and just read the situation. Now the dad didn't, he loved it, but I sensed that the mother was feeling a little bit replaced, or I was very careful, so I backed away in that regard. But she would keep in touch with me, and then when she went to college, she got a scholarship and grants and loans. She had a lot of student loans and things, and she would take a couple of courses, or maybe 3 a semester is all, because she couldn't go full time. She had to work. She was a worker. She'd work in nursing homes. She would pet sit for people. She would work double jobs even, plus school. She had to get her pay for a car, and her. By then, she did leave home and lived with a relative, rented a bedroom from a cousin, one of her dad's cousins, and then went on to get her master's. She had her degree in psychology, but when it be bad weather, by then I had moved to the city where her college was. In fact, it wasn't far from my little house, and she would come spend the night if the weather were bad or she was tired or something. So we kept up with each other all through. Beautiful voice, and she's, I think, a cantor, or was, but she met a man at some church activity, and he was a choir director for a parish in another town, and now they live in the city, and he's a choir director for a church there, music director. And I'm sure she sings there. She still goes to her hometown church to sing for funerals and weddings and things. And she has a little boy, a little girl, and is expecting another one in the fall. So they're each 2 years apart, so they'll be 3 before long. And she keeps in touch with me, but she wrote this last night, and she said, watch this. It's on YouTube, about 1.5 minute long, so cute. Then she wrote, I wonder if most of us had visions of Jesus at that age, if there would be more people living like saints on earth. I'd like to think I would. So I watched it. It was a little cartoon of Catherine of Siena, about 1.5 minutes long, and it was a little story that Catherine and her older brother had taken her to a cathedral in a nearby town, because they lived in Siena, but they went somewhere, walked a little distance or someplace, or maybe it wasn't their local parish in Siena where they went to church. Might have been some cathedral. It was a bigger church cathedral. And on the way, and it was gorgeous inside. The cartoon brought this out, and beautiful artwork, and statues. And Catherine was really taken in by it all. She was 6 years old, it said, and her brother was like 12, older brother. And they were walking back, and all of a sudden, Catherine saw this vision, it said, of Jesus, and he had a crown that looked just like the bishop's mitre with jewels in it, just like what a bishop would wear. And he had vestments that looked just like a bishop would wear. Jesus wore all these things. And she was transfixed. And then the cartoon made a big deal about it, and that this was the marking of a saint to come, and that she was transfixed by this and wonderful vision, and her brother couldn't get her attention. And I think I recall reading something of this, but it didn't have the details of that Jesus was dressed like a bishop and everything. And then it went on, she became a great saint and all this. And it was sort of cheesy a little bit, I thought. It was overdone. And but it's the kind of thing that comes after the fact. Catherine of Siena has been a saint for a few centuries now. And she was she had exterior stigmata. She asked Jesus to take it away, and he did. So she got interior stigmata instead. This is fact. This is all fact. And she went into ecstasy during Mass. I know about this. I read about it from an old book. And the Monsignor didn't like it. And so one time he had ushers pick her up, her lifeless body. She couldn't move her, and they picked her up. They dumped her out on the dirt sidewalk out by the street where the carts and things would go by, and people then went by and would kick her to see if really couldn't feel anything. So I always thought of that when I was being mistreated, when people were messing with my body and stuff. Nearly broke my neck the one time. That's why it's an additionally extra bad from that back in 2012. Messing with me despite my wearing a little sign saying do not touch or don't worry, meditating. I did, a Catholic lawyer recommended that to me to protect myself because I was being injured and brutalized by some who were angry at me. It's amazing. It's no different now than it was then, how people react to those things. And I had a Monsignor who didn't like it at all either. And he did all he could to get me out. He didn't have anybody haul me out, carry me out, and dump me on the sidewalk of the city. But he would have if he could have. So he could have gotten away with it. But anyway, I wrote back to her because she wrote this, that if most of us had visions of Jesus at that age, she didn't. What got me was having, they said that Jesus looked like a bishop dressed in bishop's clothing and had this crown with jewels like a bishop's mitre, and I just, I know from other saints that the reality of their childhoods are not as they grow to be out of people's imaginations later. More and more I've read factual things, and then when they find out that a neighbor made up things about Rose of Lima, they got all excited and they wanted a saint. So they lied when they were interviewed and, said, oh, this rose was suspended above her face, above her lips. And no, just somebody had said, oh, her lips look like little rosebud. Little newborn baby lips often do, So but this big story developed then, this legend of what happened, but as truth, people thought it was true then that she had a rose suspend right after her birth, hovered above her mouth, indicating she was going to be a saint. So, or, other things that maybe they did when they were children, but embellish it. Like, oh, wow, that's unusual for a child to have that. But I just don't know if Jesus would come dressed like a bishop with a hat with jewels or a crown with all these, a mitre cap with jewels in it and stuff. It just seemed a little bit extreme. So, that could have been from whoever made the cartoon. Maybe added those details or even in her time or after she was a saint. Maybe they knew she had a vision, or she might have just been transfixed by the glory of being in that cathedral. And at age 6 had never seen anything so grand before. And maybe a bishop was there, maybe a mass with the bishop celebrating. And just, his mitre cap and his vestments be more grand than her parish priest's vestments. And the whole cathedral would be more grand and more beautiful, and artwork, and maybe they had stained glass windows then, that and her parish church maybe did not. So maybe on her way home she was just transfixed by the awe of what a 6-year-old had experienced. That her brother, maybe she just stopped and was like, caught up in it. And but maybe it got embellished that it was this vision and Jesus, and it was this, he looked like a bishop, and I don't know. I mean, it just seems likely, or the cartoon maybe made it even more. And so here my sweet friend writes, I wonder if most of us had visions of Jesus at that age, if there would be more people living like saints on earth. I'd like to think I would, live more saintly. Well, the man she married is very, very he's very rigid in the externals, but he's well-intentioned. He takes being a father and a husband very seriously. And his work, and he's very dedicated, and so she's very devout now. I mean, I hope she doesn't get so more into the external aspects. We've had discussions since she's been married, and I know he is more literalist and into externals, of have to do things a certain way, and that can get away from the freedom to love. We're here to love, to learn to love. And he is very set in some of his thoughts, like theology and things. And he may be right, but it had caused trouble with her sister and her husband and a friend of theirs who aren't into the church that much. And so he was correcting them and, sort of put them down. And that caused problems for her. And so, I had to explain to her, that, and she understood then. I helped her understand that anything she can do to sort of mellow it out a little bit, that we have to be careful with who we're speaking with and not get too on our high horses a little bit, or even if we do know things, and it can be very abrasive sounding to others. That's how it was. It was abrasive and caused then these young women, young mothers to separate the sisters. They had a stiffness then in their relationship and weren't real fond of her husband after that. And so, these things, I think they work it all out. And it's good to be, straight as an arrow, but externals are externals. And it's the interior. It's like what I was saying about joy. It's all, what's within us is what's eternal. The externals are here for this life, and we have to understand they're not going to be with us. So, if we get all caught up in externals of even of liturgy, it has to be just so, that it's we might be missing out on some beauty and truth and goodness and spiritual. If we get real caught up in externals and how things are presented or performed or liturgy or things, and if we get too much into the external aspects. So I wrote back to her and I said, well, Catherine had just been to a fantastically beautiful cathedral with artwork and perhaps saw bishop in vestments embroidered in his mitre with some jewels or statues that had jewels in them. Because when I was over there nearby, I saw, they would put jewels into the statues and even beautiful silk clothing on statues and things. I said, even with some jewels or statues as such, and that maybe have enlivened her heart and made her prepare her heart or her mind for seeing Jesus dressed that way in her inner sight, her imagination. Not she wasn't making it up. Jesus, she might have seen Jesus, but I don't know if he was really dressed like a bishop or not. Usually, I've never read any mystics that had visions of Jesus, and he's never come to me that all dressed as a bishop or with jewels or crowns or if it's a crown, it's been a crown of thorns, or a gold, a crown, a light, an aureola for his holiness. But whatever. Anyway. I said, or perhaps she saw stained glass or statues created so beautifully that it, was inflamed her, so that she just stopped and was, trying to understand the beauty and the glory of Jesus. But I said, I knew a little girl who was all alone in a parish church on a Thursday evening. Well, it was January 23rd, I remember exactly. It was the night, and she had walked there in darkness and snow. It was the night before her 8th birthday. I was dumbfounded, the other older folks there, when I inquired, I was like, there's this little girl here all by herself. I kept, wondering, where's her mom, or no one with her? Older grandmother or somebody. No, she was just sitting back there by herself. Or no, I guess I was behind her and she was up in front of me, all by herself there, this little girl. And I said I was dumbfounded. The other older folks there, much older than me at the time, I was 44 then. When I inquired, they said they didn't know her name, but had seen her around. Some had seen her around. One finally said she thought it was one of Mark Bickle's kids. I think that's one of the Bickle kids or something. And I said, no one seemed as if concerned. This little thing would walk home alone in deep snow. It was a heavy snowstorm that night. I won't forget it. And it was snowing when she would have gotten there. Um, Same one who said she thought it was a Bickle said, lives somewhere in the area. Because I asked, well, where does she live? My goodness. Uh, well, I did not need any vision, nor did that little girl. She was there because she loved Mass and Jesus. And I knew I was seeing a saint. Seriously. This little girl is special. I saw it with my inner sight, with my vibes, that she was special. And she was a chubby little thing then, and big brown eyes, and not well dressed. She was poor, and just regular little, didn't have boots on, regular, and just a coat, and there by herself. It's dark out, the winter time. Must have been probably maybe 20 degrees out, 24, and she'd walked there and was just going to walk home. And in fact, I asked her, after Mass, I went over to her and I found out it was her birthday the next day. She was going to be 8. And I asked her, could I take you home? Meet your mom and dad. And she, sure, So, and she did, she lived, it was straight over from the church, taking some alleys through. 1, 2, I think 3 blocks. Cherries. No, just I think maybe 2 blocks away, plus the church block, from the front to 3 blocks. But I wrote this to her last night. I said, that's a true story of a real child, but it's more realistic than the cartoon one of Catherine of Siena. Ironically, the little girl I took home that evening after Mass chose Catherine as her 5th grade saint to dress up for school. In 5th grade, the 5th graders all got to dress up as a saint. And I think it was sometime in the fall they had a special Mass, school Mass, and the children could pick a saint that they were going to dress. In fact, I sewed Amanda her little Catherine of Siena outfit. She came over to my house it would have been a couple of years later then. But I said, I knew that. I said, kiddo, this was last night. I was writing to her. She's 36 now or 37. Kiddo, it does not take a vision to inspire us to be saints. It takes love of God above all things and a love of others as ourselves. And I added this, I just realized a week ago that love of self is simply to respect ourselves, to not subject ourselves to what is not respectful of ourselves. Love of God, love of others, love of self, this is our holy narrow pathway. Well, I didn't say who it was. She knew who it was. She is a saint. And she can live like that. Now, she doesn't need to have a embellished, story about a saint that's already been canonized. None of us do. We will live like saints. She says she'd like to think she would if she had that vision. So I gave her that vision of what I saw that night. And then she came both evening Mass. She went to the school, so they had Mass every morning. Monday, Wednesday, Friday at that elementary school. And then they had another parish that had Tuesday, Thursday morning. And I think the older kids went over on those days. I don't know if they all went 5 days a week or the older kids did, but she went Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but she came Tuesday and Thursday night by herself to go to Mass. In the dark, in the rain, it didn't matter. Of course, I went daily Mass morning and night. So I started picking her up too. I met her parents, and that's how her dad and mom, I got to know them, and so, and then I knew the secretary, and the school principal was an elderly nun, and she noticed that I was taking an interest in this little girl, and asked if I would tutor her, help her with her schoolwork after school. So I started doing that a couple of days a week, and I got to know that family, but kept in touch. But her dad, despite what he'd been through as a younger man, he had a heart of a saint even when he was struggling earlier in life. And he became totally clean. He didn't drink again, and just lovely people. Poor. I mean, they had money, but they didn't want, they weren't interested in having wealth or things. They were just lovely saints. They were great people. They were lovely to me, and so it's she says she'd like to think she would live like a saint, and there she already is one. We got to understand this stuff, don't we? We have to. We don't need to be looking at cartoons, or it's okay, but anyway, she liked it. She liked what I wrote, and she got the point. She's already living like a saint. She's taking care of her children. She takes care of her husband. She sings for other people's funerals and masses, and is a beautiful soul. What else is there? She loves God. She loves Jesus. She loves Mass. She loves her family. She loves others. She loves herself. She loves God. There's the saint. And she's living her life like that. So, well, I've got 2 dogs that I think, Lovey, what are you doing down there? What are you trying to get at, honey? Huh? What you trying to get? Huh, Lovey? So, okay, that's my little story about saints, and it's fun. I read the saint books. I like to read those. Now I read more, how they lived their narrow pathway, the miracles and all that. That's all fine, but that's not what is going to help teach me, or their visions or things. That's all fantastical stuff, and it's true. It happens. I bet you every one of you have had miracles and visions. We just don't think of it, do we? We don't. We get caught up thinking it has to be someone who's been written about and important, and have these what are sometimes exaggerated legends written about them, or little cartoons, to excite children. But then they think, well, I have to have a vision, to be a saint. No, I remember what little Charlene Richard's grandmother said, just do your best, just do your best. Or I think Charlene said, this might have turned off, Lovey just hit that. No, he didn't, but he hit it. He could have turned it off. They're fussing for attention and supper. God bless his real presence in us. Live like a saint. Nothing is stopping us at all. And I bet you every one of you did something as a child very devout, very loving, or teen or adult or who knows, or now. Do it tonight. And if you're ever canonized, somebody will say, "Oh, I remember, when she was a child, she said such and so." you know. So, which people? My cousin, he was reassuring his mother, just like this young man, blessed Acutus, Carlo, who assured his mother he would be okay, he would be with Jesus. My cousin, back in 1969, assured his mother, "Mom, don't worry about me. I know I'm dying. I'm going to be with Jesus." See, if he were Catholic and had been canonized, that would be something, and people, "Oh my goodness. Oh, this saint, he said this, he was portentous." Well, yes, he was a saint. He was holy. He was very devout and a beautiful soul. Always was, growing up, sweet, but he was a typical boy, too. Got in trouble, got spanked a couple of times, for not obeying and for getting in trouble. I remember when he threw a stick out into the street and it hit a guy's little VW bug, and the man chased him, and it happened he had one arm only. Oh, we were scared to death. The one-armed man chasing Cousin Philip. And he got him, he grabbed him and found out where he lived, and went home and said, "Your son threw this stick out into the street." And he wasn't trying to hit the car, but the car came. He was just tossing sticks out into the street. Kids throw stuff, boys like to throw. Girls do too, maybe. But so he got in trouble that time, but he was still a saint. He is now. And he was, the way he died, with courage and heroic faith. But, so don't underestimate yourselves. Live like a saint now. You don't have to wait for a vision to give us permission or some unusual happening. That's a lot of it, is recognize the holy in yourselves and live it. Glorify God with your holiness. You are holy and loving. Love God above all things. Love others as you love yourself, with respect